Welcome to Seltzer Squad, the podcast about staying sober in the city, with your hosts, Kate Sander and Jess Valentine.
Today's episode is sponsored by Audible. Have you just finished binging every single episode of Seltzer Squad and want even more content to fill your time with? Why don't you check out audible.com? They have millions of audiobooks and exclusive podcasts that you can't get anywhere else. And if you want your first month free, go to audibletrial.com/Seltzer Squad. Get your first month free. Think of how many free books you can get in that much time. Once again, go to audibletrial.com/Seltzer Squad and get your first month free. Hey Squad, Natalie here, editor and producer of Seltzer Squad. Do you want another way to support the pod? Go to seltzersquadshop.com and have access to all of our merch. Treat yourself and support the squad at the same time. We have hats, stickers, backpacks, posters. Buy a gift for a sober friend or just treat yourself. You can find all of the classic Seltzer Squad sayings like slickest bitch around, be nice to yourself, and of course hangovers suck. I have a tank top that says slickest bitch around and I wear it to the gym and it confuses everybody. It's the best. Once again, go to seltzersquadshop.com or go to seltzersquad.com and hit the merch button to find all of our merch.
Hi, Jocellyn.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Welcome back, Jocellyn, Harvey, to the Seltzer Squad podcast. Sorry, there's a concert going on in my backyard. And also, Squad, if you're listening, Mrs. Jessica is still on her honeymoon. So I've asked Jocellyn Harvey, who was here in May of 2020, early lockdown days, to come back and talk to us about where she's at with her sobriety and what's new, what's different, what's the same, because she is near the same amount of sober time as me, which is around 6.5, almost 7 years. And we just wanted to talk about, I don't even know what we consider this, if this is like baby sobriety or toddler sobriety. I guess it's like kid sobriety maybe now, or like 6.5, kindergarten sobriety. Because yeah, I think it's definitely different and it has a different vibe. So Jocellyn, what has been going on with you since May of 2020?
What hasn't
You're
been
like,
going
what
on
hasn't
with me?
changed?
Okay, let's see. May of 2020. So I got married in March of 2021. I got engaged of
Congrats.
March of 2020. So that was a big one. A few months after that, or maybe a month after that, oh gosh, actually, even before that, I got off of Instagram. So I've been off of Instagram for a year and a half, and pretty much most social media, like all social media. I don't have an online presence, quite honestly. And moved to Buffalo from Burlington.
Good for you.
That's been fun. Certainly a change of pace. I've enjoyed it. And I guess another random thing, a completely new thing, is that after years of being gluten-free, and I always say, like, I got gluten-free in the hard days where all you had was Ancient Harvest pasta and nothing else. There was nothing, and it was expensive. After years of doing that, I am now eating bread again and croissants with abandon and dairy. So
oh my God, good
that
for
has
you.
been such
How do
an
you feel?
exciting life change. Amazing.
You feel
It
the
maybe
same.
helped
Yeah.
at one point in my life, but also I think these past few years for most people have been an awakening of the things we're just sick of dealing with on large, massive societal scales, and also our tiny home ones of, I'm sick of feeling crappy eating bread because it's just bread. It's not like I'm trying to go out and eat something absolutely terrible, horrible for the body. So that's, even though it might seem like such a funny, mild change, it's
That's
an exciting
a big
one.
change. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And it's so different. Like I feel that feel good carbness when I eat it now. I'm like, oh, this is so good that you don't get from gluten-free carb foods. So I have just been on cloud 9 the past few weeks.
Are you going to join the sourdough gang?
I have been
The
making
sourdough
bread.
gang of 2020.
I did used to make a gluten-free boule back in the day, so I've started doing that. But when I was a kid, I never loved sour bread, so maybe I do now. But
I
I've
mean,
been making a
I've
bit of
grown
bread.
to eat it because I feel like I've convinced myself that it's somehow better for me than like store-bought bread, but who the fuck knows?
I love it because I feel like people talk about their grandmothers or great grandmothers or grandfathers who grew up during the Depression and are like, oh, they do this thing because they grew up during the Depression. Like they save all their, plastic containers because of that. And they're gonna be
Yep.
like, oh, they grew up during COVID. That's why we always have sourdough
Yeah,
bread. And that's
yeah.
why they are always stockpiling toilet paper.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's so funny to think about. Yeah, you're right. You're like, that's why I garden because we were all afraid of food shortages in 2020. What does sobriety look like for you now?
This. What does sobriety look like for me now? It's a lot chiller, which is really nice. It's I go on a lot of walks, and I used to even in early recovery, but I went on walks so I wouldn't lose my shit and spiral into anxiety and depression. And now I go on walks because it's awesome. Like every now and then I have one of those walks, but for the most part, I go on walks. I try hobbies. I've gotten a little nicer to myself about the hobbies that I
Yeah.
do and have just had fun with them and not felt like I need to be perfect or that it needs to be something that makes me money.
Yeah.
I watch still a crap load of television. I remember one of my recovery posts I wrote was like healthier ways to numb during tough times. And it was like, watch TV. It's okay to watch TV. It's not the end of the world. And these past few years, streaming, man, oh my goodness gracious, so many good shows.
Mm-hmm.
So do a lot of that in the evening. And I don't know, I just like, I chill, I putter around the house, I home make, I like it, I drink tea.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
like
it
that.
is. And yeah, I really enjoy being at a place in life, in recovery, in whatever, where it's just nice to do these things and be able to take it easy in comparison to what life was like before and not feel like, oh my gosh, I like got to be doing something, or what if I'm not doing something, and just having fun with it.
Yeah. You were saying something before we were recording where you said something about it. You still think about it every day, but you don't think about it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I identify with that. Like I always tell people like early in my sobriety was like in the front seat of the car, or like it was driving the car. It had to. And then it moved to like the passenger seat. Then it moved to like the back seat. And now it's like, it's still always with me. It's in the car, but it's not like driving the car anymore. Now I'm actually driving the car. It's not driving my decisions. It's like subconscious now. Sobriety is ingrained. I am not,
Exactly.
and I don't have any problems like with the whole alcoholic, sober, like all of the triggering like stigma has gone away. Like whatever you want to call it, I don't drink. If you want to tell me I'm an alcoholic, if you want to tell me I'm sober, if you like, I don't care, whatever, how you want to label it, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Is like how I feel about it now. Like if you want me to say those things, I'll say those things. If that makes you feel better or me feel better, fine. I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Where I was much more rigid at the beginning, where I was like, it has to be like A, B, and C. And now I'm just sort of like, thankfully, now I feel not at risk really anytime. I haven't had a thought in probably like a year. Like, those random thoughts where you're like, oh, I could have a glass of wine and no one would know. I don't even really get that. I used to get that like seasonally. And it's just cruise control, I guess, mode.
Cruise control is the best. And it's like nowadays we have adaptive cruise control. So it's like,
exactly. Yeah.
It's doing its thing. Yeah. That's one thing. It's interesting. To be honest, from right when I got sober, from being a heavy daily drinker, did not ever really have cravings in early recovery, which was just so stinking amazing. I don't know why it happens. Like, I don't think it has anything to do with the amount of work I put into it, in quotes, or anything. I just didn't. And it's funny now, I'll still have thoughts from time to time, and they've gotten different, but I also just don't freak out about them anymore. It's like we just all kind of have, these thoughts. Or if I do have the like once or twice a year drinking dream. I don't get up and think, oh my gosh, I like need to go somewhere and like talk to someone about this. It's just like, yeah, it happens. Like you have those thoughts and that's okay. You just get on with your life. And at the beginning that felt so scary, and it's nice to be able to differentiate this is a normal human person thought, being like, if it ever did get to a place of, I've really been pondering that for a while, we get to notice that we're smart enough to figure out what's really going on and when we need to ask for help.
What does asking for help look like for you now?
Oh gosh, well, again, it's never really been with craving, wanting to drink again, but asking for help was therapy. So I've been a huge proponent of therapy, and I've been through various rounds of therapy my entire life. So when I was about 2.5 years, I started going to therapy again. And that was a really lovely time for me to go. I think if you do go right when you get sober, that's your awesome, lovely time to go. For me, I liked having some time underneath my belt to figure out like why I actually want to go to therapy. And when I did that at the time, it was weekly, which was great. And then it slowly went to bi-weekly, and then it went to monthly, and then it went to per diem. So just being able to check in whenever, which I would say if you're looking for a therapist, ask if they will let you do that type of scheduling. Unless you feel like you absolutely need to be in seeing someone, go with the person who will be flexible and not feel like you need to be in therapy weekly forever. Like mine downscaled me, and she's like, how are you feeling? You want to go to this? Do you want to go to monthly? So I did that for like probably a year and a half. And then I would just pop in occasionally. And when I moved to Buffalo in 2021, I got here in June. Some things like just went down with me always trying to want to run a business and try to be a coach and try to do all these things. Like the bottom just fell out. It was like one of my bottoms in recovery. And it wasn't the scariest bottom I ever had, but as a sober person, it just really hurt. And my work has EAP, an employee assistance program. If you're in the States, your job might have that, especially if it's like a big corporate company. And I'd forgotten about that because I had a therapist, but I couldn't take my therapist with me due to like state lines and all that. And my coworker reminded me of it and was like, you should call in. And it was great. And I called in and I was like, I can't think straight right now. I just need help. Here's my address. Find me a therapist within 5 to 10 miles. And they did.
Wow.
And it was just so great. And I wasn't able to see them for a few weeks, but knowing like he reached out and was he, oh my gosh, I never would have thought I would have a male therapist. It's so great. Yeah, I mean, anyone who can help you is great. And I understand that there might be some reasons people would be in therapy and not feel comfortable with that. But it was also like, why was I so opposed to this over all those years? But yeah, that's what like reaching out looked like. And there was a few months where it just got a little better. And now I have a monthly schedule to stay on, and it's chill now. So yeah, I think that's a very long answer of what reaching out looks like. But I think as time goes on, I've gotten better, and maybe you recognize this with yourself, gotten better at being able to kindly but firmly say to myself, I'm really sick of this bullshit that's going on in my life. And it's bullshit that I'm kind of creating for myself. It's not so much outside stuff. And I also don't have to deal with that. I don't have to try to will it away or journal it away or pray it away or meeting it away or whatever. It's like, I can do this. And my quote fast track has been therapy. That's been super effective for me. I think being able to work one-on-one with someone is just so lovely and powerful. And yeah, that's what I do now.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I don't think I would be in a stable place without like seeing my therapist. And I mean, also like exactly what you said, like I'm not still in crisis, but I still, meet her on a regular basis. Sometimes it's weekly if something's going on with me. Sometimes it's not. If we have other things going on, like she's flexible, as am I. And I just like knowing that I have that as an option. I need that as an option. I know that I need that for my sobriety. And that is, I can call on her anytime that something is like dusted itself up. So that's invaluable. I think something that I've noticed recently that had hit me kind of hard in the last year is that I don't have community in real life. I think we all like built these, amazing digital, whatever, Zoom, podcast, blog, Instagram, friend groups. But like,
Discord.
I don't have anybody in real life that like I can go have a cup of coffee with. And I switched jobs a few months ago, and my new thing is a lot. It's like, I'm not in a leadership position. It's just a lot less communication. And it really leveled me that like, oh, most of my relationships were proximal, and they were with like coworkers who, once I transitioned from A to B, like we don't keep in touch anymore. Like outside of the handful of really, really close friends that I have that don't live in my, neighborhood or my state, I was really, really lonely. And that really hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I'm in school, I'm in the middle of this like identity transition, it's the career transition. And also I feel like I don't have any friends in real life to like go out to dinner with was big. And then you have to challenge yourself. Well, you have to like go figure that out then, Kate. You have to go make some friends and like be a friend. And it's been hard. But that's been the biggest takeaway, I think, for me recently is in this place that I'm at in sobriety, I just have perspective that I didn't have before. And like you said, like things don't feel as immediate. There's not as much chaos, and I can get perspective. I'm a little bit more of a master over my feelings. I'm not mastered them, but at least when something comes up, like a knee-jerk reaction, I kind of understand it more. And that's thanks to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I stopped to like analyze like, okay, why am I having an extreme reaction right now? Stop. Like, what are you doing? And so that has given me, it's like a combination of like perspective and acceptance at the same time. So I agree with you that things are chill, but on the day-to-day basis, we're all over the spectrum, right? Like,
of course,
drama all over.
It's nice to be able to go through it. When I was drinking, I was always really very high, sometimes literally, or very low.
Right.
And, the highs felt awesome and the lows didn't. And I guess it's a pick your choice in life. Like most of the time I feel really good. I feel mellow. I feel calm. And I would still take that though over like those manufactured wild moments. But can I say, I don't know if you're watching She-Hulk or anything, but in the most recent episode, I think we're on episode 4 right now, there is the quintessential drunk, kind, hot mess girl that you would meet in the bathroom. And she's just the sweetest character. And I was telling Mose, like, this is so spot on. I wouldn't go back to those days, but I do miss those friendships you would make in the bathroom. That you'd never talk to that person again. But I was like, oh, she's
friend
delightful.
For the night. Absolutely. Well, I went to Jess's, she just got married, and I went to her wedding, and I was chatting with a couple of other people that went, and I danced like till my feet really, really hurt. And I do dance at weddings till my feet really, really hurt, or I want to go home. And I don't have, really any reservations about it. And it was like a hump that I had to get over. Like, okay, sober dancing, like, fuck cares, I'm going to go, I'm going to dance. I don't really care how I look. And I think, that was one aspect that I really missed about drinking was like the loss of inhibition, going out and just having like a great time, dancing and being out, like partying. And people were like, I don't know how you can do that sober. And I'm like, I don't know how to, I would not want to be drinking and doing that at this point in time. Like now it just becomes second nature. I remember when I had those thoughts of like, oh, I don't think I can do it either, but I don't know. I'm just trying to live my life now, if that makes sense. I'm just like, what am I afraid of? Like looking stupid? Like these people are drinking. I don't care.
They're not going to remember.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. The things that I do, there was things that I only did when I was drinking, and with one of my friends who also doesn't drink. This comes up every summer. We talk about it. Is strangely enough, my tolerance for going to the beach is just not there anymore.
Okay.
When I drank, I would just go to the beach all day, just pack up my mobile bar
Mm-hmm.
cart, I would call it, and just hunker down with food and cocktails and pass out or take a nap,
Right.
partway through. And I could just go to the beach all the time because really I was just drinking in a warm, sunny place.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like, I just don't have the patience for it. And I love reading. I don't mind being in the sun, but I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. And it's not that I feel like, oh, I wish I was drinking. I'm like, I just don't have
Yeah, your
the
preferences
patience for
change.
this at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Has there been anything that surprised you about yourself in this stage of sobriety?
What has surprised me the most? I think that I'm not doing nearly as much strong, quote, strong recovery focused stuff as I was when I started. Speaking with organizations, doing articles, doing a lot of podcast interviews. I guess I thought I'd always be doing that, and I'm not. And when you reached out, I was thinking about you the day before, which was, so great. You got to love those synchronicities. And it was just
Mm-hmm.
a delight to come on. And I would love to, but I could just think of some, and I'm not even thinking of like particular people, but just some
Sure.
groups and stuff where I just probably wouldn't, because it's like that was a time in my life. And I love talking about it with people who I love talking about it with, but I also don't feel like it's the thing I have to lead with. Like I used to do that a lot. And I don't anymore, and I don't feel bad about it. And I don't think that it's me denying help from someone or
Mm-hmm.
me tiptoeing into potential relapse or anything. I think that was a big surprise. That was a big surprise in my recovery.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd never thought that I wouldn't be consumed by these thoughts
Mm-hmm.
for most of the day. And yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit about when you're in early sobriety, it's such a part of your identity. It's like the main part of your identity because so many changes have to change. So many things have to change and it's all consuming, right? And so our natural tendency is like, I'm going to start a blog. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to like do a thing. And I feel like I hope many of you squad members are laughing right now because it's real. It's why this podcast exists. And then as you get more into your own sobriety, it becomes less important. And I'm not saying that I used to do this podcast for me. Now I do this podcast for people that listen to it, I guess is the change. Like I used to do it for my own validation. Now I don't care. I don't even care if anybody's listening. I'm just hoping that the people that are getting help by
Mm-hmm.
it. And so I think that it evolved a little bit. And I've been on the sober scene for a little while and I've seen a lot of things start and stop. And I think that that's really common and part of the process. I feel like we should advertise that as older sober people, that this is part of the process. You will have these thoughts. Would you
Yes,
agree?
you will care. You will care so deeply and like shout it. And I think that that's so cool too, because probably 10 years ago, you weren't talking about it. And if you were solidly in recovery, it was very based around like anonymity and not talking about it. So I think it's great that it's
Mm-hmm.
opened up that space to like let people be able to scream and shout and share and all of these things. And I think something that I had to realize, or not even had to, like I just got to realize, was when I used to tell my story, yeah, I had some drinking experiences when I was younger and I was in my teens. But I also wasn't a consistent drinker in my teens. I know some people were. For myself personally, I went to a boarding school that had a really strict drug and alcohol policy, which is very unusual for boarding schools. So I actually like wasn't, drinking a lot as a teen. So sometimes I would think, oh, I've been drinking for like, years and years and years. And really what happened was I was drinking heavily in my 20s, like from 22 to I got sober right before I turned 25, that was pretty much daily drinking. And then there was, certainly the college drinking, but I looked at the chunk that was really the most detrimental and addictive and all of that stuff. Some funny moments in there, some good moments, but mostly destructive. And I have been sober longer than I did that. And
that's interesting.
And maybe that's not everyone's, like, I do know that I got sober on the younger side. That may not be everyone's experience, but I do wonder if some people think there's like a penance they have to pay. Like, oh, I drank for this long, I did all these things, so now I like really gotta atone and deeply atone for my recovery, and not in the way of like, yeah, changing. And if you need to apologize or make amends, I'm not even saying like make amends just from a 12-step place, but of doing that type of thing, that's fine. But not feeling like you have to do it for years and years and years and years just because, you drank for years and years and years.
Like from a shameful place. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I would agree. That's funny that you mentioned the time that you've been sober has been longer than, because also I think what I like about all these other recovery resources is that like I can safely say that I wasn't chemically dependent on alcohol. I was never hospitalized because of alcohol. I don't want to say that I didn't have a drinking problem, because I did, but I didn't have like a severe, dependency on alcohol. Like I had light bottoms, quote unquote light bottoms, right? So I don't necessarily maybe need as a deeper level of treatment as other people. You know what I mean? Like in order to recover, right? I don't want to say that it's easier for me, but I'm just saying that some people were more addicted than I was. And so I think that there are also different levels to treatment. And in my sobriety, like some people might have to go to daily meetings still. I don't feel like I have to go to daily meetings. Neither one is better or worse than the other, but I like that there are more treatment options and recovery resources now that like cater to all levels versus just like the horrifically chronically dependent people that were like, for 35 years drinking a gallon of vodka or whatever. Like I don't identify as that person, so I'm happy that, there are things now that are like, I don't want to say like alcoholic light, but not as severe. And so that for me is helpful, I guess. And like even all the things that start and stop, like I hope that continues to happen in the community. Like somebody comes in with a bunch of energy and wants to do something and create a bunch of stuff, because the stuff lives on, right? Like the podcasts live on, the documents live on, all of those resources still live on, and there was care and thought put into that stuff. So I hope that stuff lives on, because it does help people, even if like we're not into it anymore.
The evergreen nature.
Like even if you evolve out of that as needing that as part of your, resources, that now we just have a lot more resources. I have lots of friends that have created sober resources and then sort of like phased out of it, but I'm just happy that those things exist.
And I will say too, if anyone is listening to this and is in that boat of feeling like they want to phase out for whatever reason, it's okay to do that. And that sounds so silly, like I can say that now. Absolutely. But at that time in my life, it felt really scary. I guess I'll just be very honest and open on this on this podcast, as I was last time.
Thank you.
For those who remember, is a huge change that I made in my personal recovery in 2020 was I stopped going to meetings. And I
remember that.
I feel like maybe there might have been one other podcast that I slightly mentioned it on. And that was a big deal for a lot of reasons that like don't deeply need to be like gotten into, but it was really hard to feel like, am I safe to walk away from this? Is it wrong for me to walk away from this? Like, how dare I walk away from this? And that was a few weeks of listening to this one podcast about it, because there's not a lot of discussion about people who choose to make that change. And it was really scary. But at the same time, I just knew, like, on the other side of this, I'm like, there's got to be something that for me is going to be a better and different situation. And being able to say at the time, I got a lot from it. And to also be able to honestly say there were some things that were really, really messed up and just weren't,
Sure.
working. But I also knew I just felt in a good place of, I can do this. Like, I just can't stay in this and feel this way for the rest of, hopefully my life in recovery just cause. So, that was a huge transition, and it really helped me. And if it's something that you like to keep doing, like, by all means, keep doing it, and talking to people. But if there's been like this ongoing thing of whatever it is, like, I think we all know the meetings I was going to, but there's a lot of things out there too, is, knowing that if you're having these thoughts, you're smart enough. I mean, everyone's smart enough, but to be able to find the thing that's going to serve you. And at the beginning for me, it felt like, what was the next sort of recovery related thing that could help? Or maybe it was a therapist, or maybe this. And maybe the thing as it goes on is just being able to live life, to go out and, do whatever, to read a book. Like, that's the lesson you're going to learn from it. But to not stay in things out of fear, and especially out of judgment from others. Because I know I had a lot of fear when I was drinking. I think a lot of us did. And that's not a fun way to live in recovery either. So yeah, that was like one of the biggest transitions that I made. And some of the people I've talked to about is, if anyone is listening to this and is religious, I would, liken it into, oh my gosh, I completely lost the phrase, deconstructing. Like, when people like deconstruct the religion, and just how painful that is. And that's, people were probably, in that for their whole life. It was painful. And I'm not saying that has to be someone's thing, but if it is, like, you can do it. Whatever it is that you're making the transition from, whether it's, a certain type of recovery, or if it's from, oh, this newsletter was really cathartic and helpful at a point, and now it's not. And oh my gosh, I'm so terrible for not wanting to do this anymore. What will people think? Who's going to help the person behind? Like, there's always going to be awesome people coming up. There's going to be people staying. And, just being open to the fact, like, maybe in 5 years, I'll be like, like, I kind of want to, like, check something else again. Like, maybe I would do something in this area. But, the beauty of being sober, or at least, being sober because alcohol was not working for you in life before, is that you have options and fluidity that are hard to realize when you're constantly hungover and constantly in emotional pain and distress.
Yeah, I mean, if it helps you stay accountable by creating things and connecting with people and leading, great. But if it starts to impede upon your recovery and your life and your happiness, then it's also okay to evolve past it. Oprah was only on for 25 seasons. It's a long time, but like, even she was like, okay, enough is enough. Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, all things, I think the thing that I've taken away from 6.5 years is that everything is temporary. Like, it really is fluid. This feeling is fluid. This stage of my life is fluid. Gender. This thing that I'm doing. Yeah. Gender is fluid. This thing that I'm
fluid.
This thing that I'm, this place that I'm working, like, all of this stuff that I felt like everything felt so permanent when I was making decisions early on in my sobriety. And even when I was drinking, like, everything felt like defining, right? Like, okay, I'm getting this job. And maybe that was also the phase of life that I was in, because it was my 20s and that was just tumultuous. But now I'm just realizing that, like, nothing lasts forever. So who you want to show up as, what you want to do, where you want to be, what you want to work on, like, all of that can change if you want it to.
And can I just point out something you just said? It had been on my imaginary notepad to bring up, was realizing we talk so much about inner child. I get it. I had some traumatic things happen in childhood, so I get it. There's the point. But being now 31, Like I'm out of my 20s, but I'm not super far out, but I'm finally starting to realize I did this thing where I was sitting down and just kind of writing out this things that I thought were crises or crises were at the time, and just noticing how much of it was in my 20s and being like, the 20s can be just a steaming mess, just a pile, and really, really, really hard. And half of my 20s, I was sober as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a phase that doesn't really get talked about so much, of just how hard it can be. And I allowed me to have some kindness towards myself about the things that I did. And I don't necessarily mean the things that I did that were like directly harmful to other people. Not that you need to sit in deep, deep shame and be like, I can't move on for it. But just the things that I did that were very much harmful to myself, being like, yeah, that's just a really weird time. Teens 2.0. So if you're in your 20s and wondering like, what the fuck is this? Yeah, it's like pretty much the cluster was from 25 to 28 was just like, because I love my charts and graphs. I was like, no wonder I felt like such a mess. I think most people would.
Well, it's like they release us into the wild and it's just like a race for all these milestones, right? Like get a job, get an education, find a partner, get a house, get it. Like, it's like bing, 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 bing. And then, okay. So like if you win, right, you get to the top, then it's like, okay, then now I look at my life now and I'm like, there's nothing left to get.
I do still want my G-Wagon. I'm not going to lie.
Right.
Always wanted
there's
one.
like,
there's that.
Yeah, you're right. You did say that in the podcast last time.
That's hilarious. See,
so you
still
said I like
on
nice
that.
cars. So like, yeah, but the list is a lot smaller. It's just a little bit more of a relaxed vibe. And I think that it's dumb. Like now I look back and I'm like, what the fuck was I like running? I think I would have, if I could have done things, I would have ordered it all much differently. But yeah, they just like release us into the wild and then it's like the fucking Hunger Games for like these societal milestones. And then we just drink to like cope with fucking being alone in the woods together.
Oh my goodness gracious. That's the book title. That's the pull quote. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. And maybe I do think a lot of this for me is also just getting older and coming in. It's like I'm coming of age. Finally, that I'm like sober enough to be out of all this chaos. I can like come of age, which I think people were supposed to do in their 20s. If they were like, didn't have much trauma and they were remotely stable, they came into their own. Like, I feel like I'm only doing that now. My mid 30s.
A lot of things mellowed me out. COVID mellowed me out. And I say that from having a very privileged stance in COVID of never having to worry about my job, knowing getting sick. Like, I get it. And I also know that was, not the case for everyone, but it also was the case for a lot of people too. So, it was a time to mellow out a bit, to figure out what I really like, what I really want, what matters, what doesn't. My feet don't do heels anymore. It doesn't do a break-in period for a shoe. I was just talking to my husband about that. I'm like, that used to be a thing we did. We're like, oh, these shoes are going to hurt for like 3 months, but they'll finally break in and be good. I'm like, I don't have time for self-imposed pain anymore in my life. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Being married really mellowed me out, which is like, I feel like as I say that, my feminist card is getting like ripped up and shredded somewhere. But like, oh my gosh, but it did. It mellowed me out in a way I didn't think that it would. I mean, that was my thing when I was younger too. I was very boy crazy. So those were two really mellowing things. And what I said too about self-imposed pain, something that I didn't suddenly stop doing it during these last few years, but I've pretty much shaken it off, is being very mindful about the type of self-guided, emotional, spiritual
100%.
Like at some point I was like, I I got real deep into that. And I think probably every generation has their like people that they follow with their books, or for us, it's going to be all these portals that we were signed into and these things. And I'm
I
just
know.
like,
Don't get
why
me
am
started.
I inflicting so much stinking
Work. Also work.
pain on myself,
It's so much
on
work.
myself? Like, we were made to do more than pay taxes, die, and meditate for an hour every day.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we really were. So that's another thing that helped. And sometimes I have gone back and forth on that, and it doesn't hurt as much when I'm like, why am I still doing this? But I spin out of it a lot faster, like a positive spin out, where I'm like, nope, like, I don't need that. It's fine. Like, things are good. Like, and I think anyone's really susceptible to that, probably a lot of women online, but in recovery too,
Absolutely.
there's that, the desire to dig in and understand and like go back to the root
Heal.
and when this happened. And it's like, sometimes just stuff stinking sucks.
Yes.
And we can swear on this podcast. It
Absolutely.
stinking sucks. Stuff fucking sucks. And the stuff that had sucked in my life, especially the stuff that like really like happened to me, I can look at from time to time, and then at some time it's just like, I'm never going to go back and heal this, reprogram this, remove this. It's happened. Like, it's quote okay that it was not okay that it happened, but I've looked at it enough. It's not something that I need to keep digging at and digging at and digging at.
Yeah, it doesn't go away. It's not going to go away. Like it's not like, it's not an open wound anymore. A scab, you went through the scab, there's a scar, but it's still there.
Yeah. And it's okay that it's there. So it's funny, after a really long time of not journaling, I've gotten back into occasionally getting back into journaling, but I'm just so much nicer to myself. And I will say, one of the big things that I do suggest people do if you journal is, once you're done with the journal, throw that shit out. I have never found value of going back into my own journals. I've never been like, wow, I'm so deeply transformed from this person before. It's like, that's still there. But just throw it out.
It's funny
like,
that you
got
say that.
Whatever
I
out.
just recorded a journaling episode, and I was like, I love keeping them, and I love going back to read them. Literally.
Just kidding. Well, that's great. You love it. If you love it,
but I
then
also love the
absolutely do
idea
it.
of throwing it out too.
Yeah. So that's true. If you do love it, if you do love going back and reading it, then by all means. But also for me,
how did you come back to it? Because I think that's something that I've been struggling with. Is that I think at the beginning of quarantine, I journaled quite a bit, and then I just sort of fell off because things got bleak for a while, I think, for everyone. And then now I'm sort of like, I don't even know what the fuck I need to say. Like,
oh, I guess, I always just try something a little new. For me, I don't really do prompts anymore. That's just helped it. I just free flow what needs to happen. They've just all kind of had these themes to them. But yeah, I just write what I need to, and then I get to the end of it. And I will say, recently I've started writing in cursive again, which I haven't done since I was a child, and it's very meditative. So that's something new. But yeah, I kind of have fun with it, even though the stuff that goes in isn't necessarily the funnest. But yeah, I don't feel like if I get on a good, all the time with the air quotes, but if I get like on a good run of journaling, it's cool. And then if I stop, that's fine. Like, I don't feel like I need to do it every day anymore. If I don't do this, Gary Vaynerchuk says I won't get what I want.
Yeah. You're not hustling hard enough. You don't want it bad enough. I think about like myself in the context of, I don't know if you saw this Sex in the City, where like it's the Charlotte one where she's in the auditorium listening to that woman talk about love, and the lady's like, well, you just don't want it bad enough. And Charlotte's like, I do. I want it really bad. Like, you just don't want it hard enough. And I think a lot of that, like, spiritual stuff, I agree with you. Like, I feel like I went through it and came out the other side. And then, like, now it's almost an aversion for me, where I'm just like, fuck, what a scam. Like, it. And I do think that there are merits, and it did help me at particular points in my life. But again, I still think that, like, the gold star standard for me was therapy. It wasn't any of that other bullshit that I spent money on. I think if I had just gone to therapy, like, I still would have maybe ended up in this place. But it's like such a meme. Another girlfriend of mine who's thinks she has more time than I do, she sent me a meme a while ago, and it was like, like what part of sobriety are you in? Like, are you making candles to sell yet? Like, have you started your sober side business? Is like the check mark and like a rite of passage in sobriety? So you mentioned like not wanting to monetize your hobbies anymore. What are you doing for hobbies that because I'm trying to do the same thing where I'm like, okay, this is just for joy. I have no joy. I don't enjoy anything that I don't turn into work or a side hustle. What are you doing for yourself?
So in the beginning of the year, 2022, I decided I wanted to paint watercolors because I was at TJ Maxx and I saw some watercolors. So I bought them and then was like, I am out of my element. What is this? So I got into painting watercolors, very quickly learned that it's a lot easier to paint watercolors if you know how to draw. I literally never took a drawing class in my life. So I've picked up drawing and watercolors, and the place that we moved into in Buffalo, cost of living, Buffalo, Vermont, or Buffalo, New York, compared to Burlington, Vermont, is very low. So we kind of splurged and got a 4-bedroom. So we each have our own office.
Oh, I love that.
It's great. And so I have 2 desks in there. I have my work desk. I have my painting drawing desk. I recently got into sewing, and I'm not going to lie, I did get into sewing from a bit of a perfectionist standpoint. I did fall down the kibby style hole of dressing for yourself. I heard that was like a thing online. So even though I wasn't, it was going around in the world. I got sucked into it. So I did get into it from a bit of a like, I just want to be like a perfect little dress and outfit maker. Not there yet at all, but I've started doing that. I mean, it's not like a hobby, but I really love homemaking. I find it might seem silly to say, but I just find a lot of value in being able to do this. To be able to, my husband's in a program right now, so to be able to really support him while he's out and doing that. I love cooking. I found out recently that I really like being able to do physical things and just be able to see the work that I've done and not just have it on a to-do list that I checked out. That's really lovely. And then completely not hobby, but the past few weeks, I have returned to watching The Nanny. And I'm streaming it on HBO Max. So if you have that, and it is just so funny. It's such an upbeat, positive show that has aged fairly well, actually. I watched Will and Grace a few years ago, and I was like, ooh, some of those things, there's a lot of anti-body positivity in those episodes. But it's just really funny, and I didn't realize how much, just lighthearted, feel-good stuff. Oh, and then my last hobby, I don't love calling reading a hobby because I don't want to fall into being like a bookstagrammer who like needs to read 20 books a month. If you love that and you're getting paid for it, like go for it. But I know that could be a slippery slope that I get into. But I this year started reading cozy mysteries, and having been a writing major, I wasn't super, super snotty, but definitely that like, oh, mysteries. And series, like who reads those? And I stinking love them. I read this Scottish series, and I just love there's always a new story, but the characters and the certain phrases. And it's like when people talk about those who have anxiety, like watching the same TV shows or
and rewatching Grey's Anatomy.
It's kind of like that. So that's what I do. I pretty much live the life of a retiree who also still has a job.
Yes. I think that's the goal. I think that's the people who came out of the pandemic and did it right. They're trying to like pull me back in school and back at work. And I'm like, no, I don't want any of this. Like, I didn't know this is a terrible idea. Like, I hate coming back into the world. But one of my good friends, she's like, I'm into reading fairy porn now. Like, I read like fairy, like, literotica. And I'm like, listen, whatever turns your crank. Like, I think 2022, there are no fucking rules. I think there are still people who are trying to like impose these old rules, and it's just like cringe. But
no, I mean, that's how I got into mysteries. Was I started in some romance, and I say smutty with like with kindness, and smutty romance, and then regular romance, and I was like, I actually really like cozy mysteries. But every now and then I'll dip back into my tawdry books. I'm reading one right now called The Duke's Captive, and
Ooh.
it's not the thing I can read consistently. It's like I
Yeah.
just can't eat Reese's every single day
Yeah.
as much as I would want to, but it's great. Like the cover is just like buxom, breasts out, huge shoulders. Everyone's like striding. Men stride in the 1800s. He
Okay.
strode across the room. It's just, and I just love that. I think I was so serious in my 20s, and I had such.
I didn't even like reading because I thought I wasn't smart enough to read those books, like the right books, I'm using quotes. And it's like, fucking, there are so many other books.
I just want to have a
what's
fun
a
life
cozy
now.
mystery? Can you tell me what a cozy mystery is? Is that like
Oh my
not super, it's not super hard, like you can read it for before bed?
Yeah, so it's not like a police procedural.
Okay.
Usually sometimes you'll have a constable that's living in a cute little town. But generally it's like someone like you, and a murder happened and you decided with no skills that you're going to solve this.
I love that. Okay. I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like I could be of the cozy mystery genre as well.
And there's so many niches inside them, but like Agatha Christie is considered the OG one. Yeah, at first, like in my 20s, I would have just stuck my nose up at the books and the covers and been like, absolutely not. And now, whenever I get a new one, I'm like telling Bose, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a new one. Guess what Hamish is up to? Like, I want to go to Scotland now. I know so stinking much about Scotland and 1980s crofters' rights than I thought was possible.
All right.
So pick up a fun random reading or random TV hobby.
All right, squad. Well, we know winter is coming, and we know the darkness is it's the season is upon us. The darkness is coming, so I think we all can tuck into some cozy mysteries.
BT Dubs, are you watching House of the Dragon?
Of course, I'm on the Reddit threads. You know, I love it like a community moment, and I love that they make us wait every week because you know my ass would have binged that shit.
I feel like I'm 2 more episodes away from being super attracted to Matt Smith's character. I'm so bad with names.
Is that
the blonde bad one who's like,
oh, Damon?
Yeah, Damon.
I feel like I can get into it, yeah. Especially like, after the last episode.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yes.
His hair is so bad though.
I don't necessarily love at the end of every episode where we have to listen to the stand-ins for Benioff and Wise, who I know are still attached to it. The old showrunners be like, we took a woman's perspective. I'm like, oh, you think?
I think Lord Corliss is pretty hot too.
But aside from that, I'm very much enjoying it. You know, I'm building up my tolerance for like violence and practically seeing someone's bum hole during a sex scene. I was like, oh, I can't believe we used to watch this stuff like all the time and talk about how we watched it. It's like, oh.
Yeah, I feel like I should just break down and read his books, but they just seem too intimidating, and I already have too many books to read with school. So, that's it. Okay, what else are you doing this fall? What are you doing as the darkness is upon us?
The darkness is upon us. So actually, I'm probably a few weeks out from starting to get my LED candles. Safety first. My LED candles going, really turning the living room into a cozy space. I freaking love sweater season. I love getting my little mug out with some tea and going on morning walks. Let's see, what else am I doing for fall? You know, just kind of like cruising through. This is like a complete like aside, but I will say, if this could be helpful for someone who is listening, is I actually don't get SAD in the winter. Like I don't get seasonal affective disorder in the winter. I get it in the summer, which some people do. So if you ever notice yourself getting really like depressed for no reason and super anxious when it's like starting to turn summer, that like could be what it is. I totally freaked out this year and I was like, oh right, I've done this every single year of my life. And I used to think it was just when I was drinking, and it's like I still do it in recovery. It's something about like still you're like not your melatonin. Yeah, your melatonin and your serotonin and the sunlight and like the amount of sunlight that you are getting can actually like overwhelm some people until it starts to peter out. So I actually look forward to winter.
Belong in Scotland.
Yeah, I don't love it. Like I would love to live in a place that doesn't snow all the time, but I don't get that like understandable pre-winter fear that some people do, but I do get it in the spring before summer starts.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. bodies are weird. Brain
Bodies are
chemistry is
weird.
really, really bizarre.
Well, thank you so much for coming back to have another chat with me a couple years later so we could see how you're doing and to have some perspective, right? Things change, things evolve.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything that you want to, anybody? Oh, wait, you had a good idea. You had a hot mess story, but with a twist.
Oh yeah, like what is a hot mess hoedown look like in sobriety, because they can still happen. Go listen to the last one, episode 76, I believe, to really hear one of my hot mess stories
how
before.
do you think these are different? Because when you like pitched this, I was like, whoa, fuck, I've never thought about that, but I have made, I don't know, what's an example?
Okay, so one that I had, and I've had it the same one in like varying degrees over the years. It gets a little better. But I bet a lot of the people that listen to this are probably like a bit quote type A, if we're using archetypes. And over the years, I've just had this habit of starting blogs, starting websites, starting businesses, getting into it, throwing all my time into it, staying up late, trying to like do Pinterest, trying to smash through a bunch of podcasts, all these things. And it's sometimes it's very tied to my cycle of like the highs and the lows. And it's a high and a low in my cycle that I don't do well with. And I've just had to be humble to accept that I don't do well with it. And it's okay that I'm not going to be an online business person. And why I say, just that it's, a hot mess is because usually it ends with me like one morning waking up being like, I can't do this. I'm so embarrassed. I need to tear everything down. I need to scrub this history for everything. And then like go sit in the shame of why did I do this? Oh my gosh, I wasted so much time. Oh my goodness, I wasted so much money on this program and this and that. And just, it's funny because, or it's not funny. It is funny.
It's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time. Yeah.
But it's just, and at the beginning when this first started happening, like it would really like spin me out into like one time I was up for like 24 hours straight, which in recovery is like usually not a thing that you do. That's usually not a great sign. And yeah, it's just those moments of our own type of personal insanity. Like with some people, it could be dating apps, or it could be like work at a job, or trying to like be a perfectionist about something, totally happen. And I'm sharing about it right now, but I've also just like been able to let it happen and be like, okay, I also don't need to then go and like share it with everyone else either in order to like feel better about it or use it for like a teaching experience, to just be like, it's okay that like I had this moment, and it's okay that I feel pretty embarrassed about it, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm going to be okay. So that's one of my sobriety hot mess moments that I've gotten to learn from time and time again.
That's a good
it's
one.
Gotten a little easier.
I don't know if I have them. I'm trying to think of one. I think that's like a hot mess moment that I just have to learn to live with, is that after every conversation, I will inevitably leave thinking, did I talk too much? I talked too much. Like after we hang up, I will be like, oh, I really had a great time, but I think I talked too much.
I'm going to wake up at 2 a.m. and be like, I can't believe I talked about not going to meetings anymore. Someone is going to reach out to me and tell me that I'm the worst person in the world, and how dare I? And like, I will be up at 2:30 this morning, spinning out. Call me.
But that's like a sober hot mess thing for me that like I just have to learn to live with. And like, if I did, who fucking cares? Like, okay, so she did. What if they were like, well, that bitch never shut up? Okay, and we all move on. I don't know. I think that's the acceptance part, is like before that would spin me out. Now I'm like, well, maybe I fucking did talk too much.
Oops.
Yeah. But that's a good one. I need to start asking our guests if they have a sober hot. I'm going to ask for a drunk hot mess and a sober hot mess moment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, until we meet again, even though we've never met, but I hope we do video chat again.
Yeah. Hit me up in 2 more years. I'll put it in my calendar right now.
I'll hit you up in 2 more years. Until we meet again, be nice to yourself. And don't forget that hangovers suck, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Every review helps other listeners find us. Music by Dead Go West. Art by Kate Sander. For show notes and resources, check out seltzersquad.com.